Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur or busy individual looking for self-care ideas, you're in the right place.
And we can't wait to share our experiences with you. Welcome to the closet!
Didn't think you'd ever be back here.
Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, in the closet, on the floor.
How does it feel to be back in the closet?
Like I'm surrounded by hopes, dreams, and possibilities.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that. Okay,
Amazing.
we're bringing the silly fun. We are going to talk about some real stuff tonight too, though. Yes. We have Evelyn here, and we're so very excited. We hope that you like her as much as we do.
I'm so excited to be here. Super happy.
Yes.
Never thought I'd say I would be happy to be back in the closet. Oh,
that's two.
I know. Oh.
What makes you so happy to be here tonight?
I feel like I just love the opportunity to like share what I do, but also like talk about like topics that are super complicated and hard for people to like wrap their head around. But for me, they're not. Like it's super simple. It doesn't have to be scary. I'm not scary. Like it's fine. I'm in the closet. Like it's casual. Like so I just love the I love the opportunity to kind of demystify some of the fear around the work. And also to remind folks that like people are people. Like,
yes, they really are. They really are.
Yeah, like why do we have to make it more complicated than it has to be?
Literally. Like it's not that hard.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Well, I've been lucky enough to be having some sessions with Evelyn, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. But already my eyes have been opened in a lot of different ways, and we just have this like natural trust and rhythm with each other that's been really cool. Yeah. So I've been really pumped to be getting you scheduled in to join us. But I think before we go any further, maybe we should talk about what is DEI.
Yeah, okay.
So that we give some context to our listeners who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I choose to use DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion in that order, but you may hear it as EI, so equity and inclusion, or you may see EDI, so equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Oh, wow.
But it all is technically the same concept. Okay. But based on the order in which the letters are in, it tells you a lot about the person that you're navigating and how they view the topic as a whole.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. But in short, what it means is I basically teach people how to be people. It sounds really complicated, right? I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. It's really like official. And
it's such a buzz. Right?
Yeah.
So you're not just a buzz. Like you're the real deal here. Breaking it down and telling us like it's not as complicated or scary as we think it is.
Literally. Yeah. But I can understand that it's like learning a new language. And I always tell people that when they start learning a new language, nobody expects you to be able to like order food and get a taxi and do all of these things. And so I don't know why people assume that as they're starting off in this journey with this kind of like kindergarten level understanding of concepts, why they feel like they should be able to have a PhD in 2 weeks, right? Like we don't tell that to children, so we have to have a little grace with ourselves, you know?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, we expect ourselves to learn things just because we want to know them now. Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Huh. So you do the DEI work. Through your company Beyond the Brim.
Yeah, well, actually 2 companies. So Beyond the Brim Consulting and Bradley Consulting.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
How do they differentiate, overlap? What does that look like for you?
So for me, Beyond the Brim Consulting is more of our corporate facing organization. So it's really about how do we create like DEI strategic plans, or how can we provide workshop opportunities that are a series of them, as opposed to just like a one-off 60-minute, 200 people good luck, sit and get kind of check a box thing. So, right. Beyond the Brim is designed to do the opposite of that. So it really holds folks accountable. It requires one-on-ones with leadership, post and pre kind of sessions. And it requires several sessions in order to really sit with information and then be able to come back and ask questions. Bradley Consulting is just fun for me. So Bradley Consulting is me doing a lot of one-on-one coaching. And I get to say yes to not-for-profits, and I get to say yes to individuals who may not have the same professional development budget, frankly, as some of these like corporate institutions and entities. So it's fun. Bradley Consulting is really like DEI for everyone. And I think that Beyond the Brim is very much still that, but on a more corporate facing level.
I like that. So you're doing the same work. It's just outputted in different ways.
Yeah. And there's a little bit more autonomy with Bradley Consulting in that I'm not held to the same kind of, and at the end, there will be a 50-page report.
Right. It's a little more cash.
Yeah. It's just a little bit more personable, right? Like I find that with like corporate learning opportunities and solutions, it's all very heady. And at the end of the day, I need you not to be a dick at work. Like, and so how can I teach you not to be a dick at work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man. So many things going through my head.
Are you hired through like HR people? Like how do you get out there?
Right.
Like what you do?
That's a good question.
It's PI.
So not word of mouth, right?
Right. Okay. So this is a weird question because really is word of mouth, yes. And also people are actively seeking maritime specific solutions to a lot of their DEI needs because they're very maritime specific.
Right.
And so with Beyond the Brim Consulting, it's really quite easy for people to find us on LinkedIn or on the internet with a simple
you probably
Google
don't have
search.
much competition, do you?
Well,
or none that are doing it the same way.
Right. And that's the thing. Like the Beyond the Brim, not to sound like a commercial, but the Beyond the Brim experience provides a unique opportunity. No, seriously though. Yeah. Like,
but it sounds like it.
Literally. I think that it's really funny because we don't ever think of professional development as being fun. Yeah. We don't ever think about it as something that we want to do or want to hold on to. We want to learn and we want to grow, but no one's like geeked to sit for 4 hours and like be talked at. Right. And so I find that because I happen to have taught intermediate age kids for an extended period of time, I run my sessions like I ran my grade 8 classroom. So there's music and there's interactive components and we get up and we do things. And I find that even in our like adult corporate bodies, we're still grade 8s.
We still need to play.
Yeah.
Like you got to bring the fun into stuff. Like anything that we're going to learn, if it's dry, you're just not going to retain it.
Correct. And so we do a lot that is unique in that way. And I find that that works for people that it works for. And I'm very clear that Beyond the Brim and Bradley Consulting are not for everyone. We don't work with everyone, and because our system doesn't work for everyone. But I do find that folks are eager to learn what we do. And I find that some folks are super excited to engage, and then they see what the work looks like, and then they're a little less excited to engage.
Oh, goodness. I think that means you're doing it right.
Yeah. Well, I find that if you're not ready to get your hands dirty, don't go in the garden, right? Like, get your groceries from the grocery store then. Like, don't grow them, right? Yeah. And so there's a level of effort that is associated with really digging into this work that not everybody's ready to do, you know?
And everybody wants, like, the easy solution. Like, oh, just give me exactly what I need to do and in an hour, let's give a little synopsis.
Evelyn, can you give me a list of microaggressions, please? Yes, sure. There are only 10. Like, no, I can't give you a list.
And there's so many variables, right? Like, there's an infinite number of possibilities that you could cover, right? So it's more like, what are the tools to respond to them, or like when to respond or not respond, or what to say or not.
Exactly.
Right?
I always compare it to how people learn math in Canada versus how people learn math in the United States. And the reason why I say that is because some of us like memorized math, and that's how we learned math. That's how we know how to do math. And some people understand math. Right. And some people understand math.
Right.
We may know that 2 + 2 is 4, but we don't understand the proof for that. Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of DEI is that people have memorized a lot of this information. They have level 3 vocabularies, but their competency level in context is level 1 or lower. And I find that that's a challenge, because if I know the vocab word and I can spit it back to you, society says I've learned it. Congratulations, give me my certificate. And it's like, but what do you do when you're standing across from a person? That's what I need you to know how to handle. Right. And so it's an interesting thing when we talk about DEI in context, as opposed to kind of in these heady theories. We lose the fact that we're talking about people in the work sometimes, and that's really hard. So Beyond the Brim and Bradley Consulting really does a good job at centering people.
You're really humanizing.
Yeah, we have to. I'm a person first. Right?
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not like a walking DEI billboard. I'm a person. And with that comes a lot of elements. And so we've been desensitized to people, really. And so I try to bring that back in. I try to round us back out and be like, nope, we're talking about humans.
That's awesome.
Humans.
I'm curious. You work with the Beyond the Brim, where you're working with corporate folks. Are you working with people from this is like a multiple part question.
Oh my goodness.
Okay,
let me adjust while you ask this. Because my
one moment, please.
Already.
So,
one moment, please.
Is it a group of all leaders from the same company or mixed up from other companies? Is one person saying, hey, you all have to go to this, or are they putting up their hand saying, I choose to go to this? And
this is too many things.
Okay, let's start there.
Okay, start over. Okay, so
I'm a coach. I should be asking short, concise questions.
What are you doing?
No, I'm not coaching you right now. So
That's
I get
true.
to ask
That's
long
true.
questions. These are not powerful. Do you work with intact groups, teams from one company, or people from lots of different companies?
Okay, so I work strategically with groups and teams in-house, and that's because there's a trust level there that you don't have with strangers. I find that when I walk into a room and I'm wearing a bow tie and I've got a fedora on and I'm wearing suspenders, people get real nervous. So if that happens and there are other strangers, it's too much. That we don't learn anything. We're not honest. We're trying to tell me what I want to hear. And so I find that when I work with close-knit teams who want to do the work, there's also a follow-up accountability piece there, because they were all in the room together when they made those agreements and commitments.
That's true. That's true. I like that. Yeah. And
community accountability is huge with this work.
Yeah.
Because I don't work there. I'm not there every day. I don't know what was said.
You're not saying, hey, wait a second. We talked about this yesterday. Here's a perfect example of,
Exactly. But it puts people in a position to kind of be empowered. Yeah. And that's the thing about DEI. I feel like right now it is framed from the context of not empowering people, but shaming people. And so for me, it's like, what does it look like to empower you with information about yourself and about others so that you can move forward, not from a place of fear, but from a place of genuinely wanting to learn and grow as a person. Yeah. Like, not to quote Chandler leadership here, but what does it look like to get curious about DEI? Like, that's a big thing for me. Yeah. And that was before I even knew that language was a thing.
Right. Yeah. It's so great. And I love that you're so open to questions, right? Like I'm going to divulge some things probably from our sessions a little bit, but they're about me.
I feel like it's okay, right? You want to do. They're your sessions.
But it's like you've called me out on the fact of, you see me as someone who will like hold back. Yeah. Right. Because I'm scared to say the wrong thing. Yeah. But I don't feel that with you as we like, especially now that we've built our relationship. But even from the beginning, I was like, okay, maybe not that first meeting. No, because I was like, I'm just like sitting back and listening, and I'm like, okay,
oh yeah,
what is this? What are we doing?
So nervous.
What does Lisa want to do?
What does Lisa want? Oh yeah. Oh my goodness.
Julianne was nervous.
Yes.
Well, I was just like timid, right? I was observing.
Yeah.
I feel like I would quantify it as nervous, but not from the judgy, like she was nervous, but from like a genuine place of like uncertainty. And like a little bit of fear, because like, of course it's intimidating.
Assessing like, do I have the capacity to take this on right now too? Because like I do know that it is a lot of work. And I've been in overdrive of learning and self-development lately, and sometimes you need a break. Too. Like, and I know that I'm very privileged to say that I could take a break, because I know there's a lot of people who can't. So like that's me even catching myself saying like, wow, how lucky am I to say I could take a break from learning. Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel shitty about that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. We shame and should ourselves so frequently that we don't know how to not. And we assume that as we navigate the world, other people are shaming and shoulding us also. And that's where it gets gray, because, again, oh man, I clearly did my reading. Shout out to Lisa, I did my reading. Good job. That's a story that you're telling yourself. That's not a fact.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a difference, right? There is a difference between those two things. Okay, so it's like one of those things where it's like, what does it look like to really engage from a place where you are comfortable with the fear? How do we get comfortable with our discomfort? And I find that it's with people. It's not nerve-wracking anymore, because you're talking to Evelyn. You're not talking to a DEI consultant. You're talking to me. Yeah. And it's my job, right? And I feel like that's the biggest thing for folks, is when they start talking about some of these topics, they immediately go to their friends, because of course you do. That's your safety net. You're like, okay, if I say something stupid to my friend, they're still going to be my friend. I'm like, you hope.
Yeah. Depends on how stupid.
Right. And nobody said it was stupid but you. You decided it was stupid. You put that on yourself. Nobody said that to you. And in some cases people do, and like, don't let people should you. That's just simple. But like, I find that with this work, folks really do get hung up. And I find that I'm not a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, but I am a professional who can also be your friend, right? And I find that when we ask our friends who aren't educators and they are not trained to teach and they get frustrated and then we're confused, it's like, don't call me Julianne if you cut your finger in the kitchen. Go to the ER and get it sewn back on. I'm not showing up with dental floss to fix it. Yeah. Right?
Not my zone of genius.
Right. Like
not even my zone of competence.
Go find a professional. And so I think it's interesting with DEI work, for whatever reason, we've all been conditioned to believe that we can read our way, podcast our way, TED Talk our way to a PhD. And I'm like, no. This is not like life's definition of Coursera courses. Like, you cannot do that. Like, it's not how it works.
Yeah.
And it's tough because there is a privilege in paying someone to do the work. Right?
Yeah.
I was talking with someone a couple days ago. I was doing a workshop and somebody said, Evelyn, it's really elitist of you to assume that people can afford to pay you to do things. And I said, I think it's interesting that when I said compensate me for my time, you assumed I meant dollars and cents.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Is my emotional labor worth something? It sure is. And guess what? I like coffee and beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
PEI is tiny. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting at a bar in PEI and somebody says, I want to have a DEI question. And I say, buy me a beer and I'll answer it.
Yeah.
No, I feel like that's so fair.
Right. And they're like, absolutely. What else can I buy you? And I'm like, nope, depends on the question. Let's start with the beer first. The beer is to hear the question.
Let's start here. Yeah.
And so what does it look like to not have a capitalistic approach to humanizing people? There's not a cost to being human. And we shouldn't put a cost on it. But yes, it's emotional labor. It is effort. It is work. I am a professional sometimes when I'm not like drinking beer in a closet.
It's very professional. What are you talking about? I don't know about
You're professional.
Got my clothes in the back.
No, it's all good.
Out the closet. It's all good.
I know. I'm checking out the cardigans. It's like, but yeah, it's an interesting concept when we try to cognitively shortcut our way out of doing something. And I'm like, nope. Your skin color is not an excuse for your inaction. Your bank account is not an excuse for your inaction. Like, that's not real. It doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that you go and you find the number one person on LinkedIn for DEI and you email them and say, I want to buy you a coffee and ask you questions. They're going to tell you no.
Yeah.
But, like, use your resources.
But that's how you want to do things here. Yeah. And PEI is such a let's go sit and have a drink, or like let's walk the boardwalk and talk, or like let's whatever. It's you have to socialize it to get it, I guess, is what I'm hearing too, right? Like, you can't just like read it and absorb it. It has to be an interactive exchange of some sort to see, like, am I applying it properly? Like, is this how we practice it? And I don't know, like,
and I think it's interesting because we think that we should have the retention capacity that we had at 4, and we don't.
No, we don't.
We can't.
This girl's almost 30, so she's getting up there.
Don't be mean.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because we want to just quickly like do it, and we want to know it, and we want to just be good at it for the sake of being good at it.
Yeah.
Well, because we feel like we're supposed to also. Like,
I mean, we should know how to people. But
we should. And PEI, I find, so I grew up here and neither of you did, which is interesting. Yeah. I'm also really glad that I left for 10 years and lived in a very diverse, bigger city and could understand that people are people, because I actually grew up with only people who looked like me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, and that's just the race part, right? But different like abilities and learning and so many different ways that we can be diverse.
Yeah.
That I just wasn't exposed to any of it. And so I can imagine if I hadn't left and come back, like how far behind I would feel. And that would be really scary in many ways, right? Because that's really, really vulnerable to be like, ugh, like, I don't even know where to start.
Well, and I think that that's the hard part is, yes, exposure is important. But, like, if you look at the United States, exposure is not the problem. That's a choice.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so I got to, like, as much as I understand this and want to be like, we have to get more diversity. It's like, and who's supporting that, and how are we supporting those families who come here who are now responsible for educating their neighbors while also trying to learn a new language?
Right. And like having and grieve the loss of their home
literally
place and like maybe family members.
Exactly. And I find that you know, PEI is, I love doing work here. I love doing this work.
I was wondering that.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So rich. The reason why I say that isn't because I'm like, PEI is effed. Like, no. I'm saying, God, you know what? That's the only thing anybody's going to hear me say this. Evelyn Bradley said PEI is effed.
They're just going to pull that snippet out.
Soundbite.
Do not steal that soundbite out of context. You will not be canceled. Look, we got your back.
Look, there goes my political run in 2 decades. This one sound clip is going to come. Darn it. No, but I think that PEI is so rich because PEI has a really interesting way of defining community that is something I've never experienced in my entire life. And when I moved here in 2020, the day the liquor store closed was the day we showed up.
Oh, no.
Literally. Yep.
Did you have to make friends really fast?
No, not even. It's PEI. I called the liquor store and said, we just immigrated here. Can I do a trunk drop? They said, do you have a driver's license? I said, yes. They said, cool. What do you want?
Yeah, PEILC.
No, like, somebody's going to be like, they're not supposed to do that. No, it never happened. No, but seriously, like, and so for me, the way that the community navigates its own differences is really wild because there's work to do. Like, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
There's some things we have to fix. But what I'm finding is interesting is that when I'm standing face to face with another person, very rarely do I get the same malice or internalized hate that I get in the States.
Really?
This is the first time, in my adult life that I have not been called out of my name by a stranger on the street. And I literally had to work through that about 6 months ago because I freaked out. I was like, no one's called me a racial slur. No one's called me a homophobic slur. No one's called my wife a homophobic slur. No one has looked at us weird because we're interracial. No one has said anything to us because we're married. Like, it's not the same place. And that's, again, not to say that there's not work to do. Don't pat yourself on the back, PEI. But we have figured out that community is more important. And I find that when I am sitting in a session and I'm looking for the buy-in from a male participant, and I say, I haven't seen my wife hasn't seen her father in 2.5 years because of COVID. It now is about a person. It's not about her pronouns. It's about her being a person. They are now seeing her for the first time in some cases that they have the whole time I've done the presentation.
Right.
And for me, that's unique to PEI. That ability to pause and see through it is what makes this community capable of doing the work. And it's why I don't want to do the work anywhere else.
Right.
People keep asking me, they're like, do you want to go to Halifax and do this work? They'd be more receptive. And I'm like, I do think that on some level is kind of true. But I also feel like, no, I want to do it in PEI. I want people to buy the Soleil lettuce and to know that they're buying it from queer people and that that's on purpose.
Yeah.
And not that they're buying it from queer people on accident because they like the lettuce. You know what I mean? Like, I want us to
actively
really start,
pick out
to start making conscious choices as opposed to being kind of passive observers of our decision making and what we're doing.
I did not know that about the Soleil people. And I do love their lettuce.
They're queer.
And now I love them even more.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
They're awesome.
And those are important things to know. And I guess it's because community is ridiculously huge here. Like I just lost my grandfather, and the support and the people that came by and like the ridiculous amount of food, like that's so PEI, right? And it wouldn't matter who it was.
Do you know
really.
how many houses I got invited to this holiday season?
I bet. Yeah.
So many.
Oh, you
and
don't have an Easter dinner plan? Come to ours. Come to ours.
Like, here is the address. Don't feel pressure, but if you want to show up, you can.
Yeah.
And for me, that's so fascinating because I grew up in the American South, which is in theory very similar, right? Yeah. Supposedly, it's very similar. Supposed to be community oriented, very family forward, very strong connections and roots and all of those things. But I tell people all the time that like PEI is all the parts of the South I like minus the KKK and these mosquitoes.
There you go. I mean, welcome to PEI.
There's
the tourism PEI flag right there.
No. But it's interesting, right? Because as somebody who, like, my wife and I have coined this phrase "gay from away."
Yes.
And folks really do kind of get a little, they don't really know what to do with it because they know that come from away is not supposed to be derogatory.
Right.
But the second I say I'm a gay from away, they freak out because they would never say that to me. And I'm like, well, if come from away is not a negative term, then why then what's the problem? If you're not being condescending, if you're not using that as the Southern equivalent of bless your heart, like then it's fine, right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because I love kind of flipping some of these paradoxes on their head because I think it really makes people think about what they're saying and what they're doing, right? Because we chose to live here. We could have lived anywhere in Canada, and we chose to live here. And people ask me all the time, well, why PEI? And I'm like, why not? Why wouldn't you want to be there? Have you visited?
Right.
People retire here. Do you know people work 50 years of their whole life to spend 10 years here? Like, what?
That's wild.
It's like less than a fourth of your life, and this is what you've chosen to work your entire life to come do.
Yeah,
I want to come here and be 30, and thriving. Like,
Love
why not? Right?
Absolutely. No, it's really cool. It's neat to see people coming here and doing that. Like, it's such a mixed thing for me because I'm like, normally you would see the older folks coming, right? And now we are seeing more younger families or, you know, whatever your marital situation, that is, right? Coming into the downtown, out into the country, all over the place. People are flocking here like crazy.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It is. And it's
not great for housing, but
right. Oh my gosh.
But that might have to be a whole other podcast.
Literally. Could also talk about that. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too because I come from a place of knowing that English is my first language. English is the language that my brain thinks in first. And so there's a lot that comes when I say immigrating to PEI was great because I don't have the same barriers of other people, right? I also have the benefit of being like, I don't know, halfway charismatic sometimes. So like for me, going out, meeting people, having conversations, that is easy for me as someone who isn't maybe on the spectrum as far as neurodivergence is concerned, and somebody who is, you know, what I would think would be societally attractive and like all of these things. I don't have some of the barriers that people come with. And so I say, yeah, PEI is great. Immigrating to PEI, super simple. But that's not everybody's reality here. And I think my biggest thing is how can we not use me as the excuse for why we don't need to do better? Well, Evelyn's fine. Yeah, my wife is Canadian. Like, what? Like,
everyone's circumstances are different.
Yeah. And did I flee a depressive country? Of course I did. Is my mom a doctor? Of course she is. So like my reality is very different, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm kind of curious, how did you get into this line of work?
Oh gosh, this is a long. Okay.
No.
Well, I taught grade 8 English for an extended period of time, and I found that as I was progressing in my profession, I wanted to pursue a master's degree, right? And so I went to school and I was doing courses, and conveniently the superintendent was running one of our courses, and I was informed that I checked too many diversity boxes to ever be an administrator or a principal. So I decided in that moment that I was going to do something different. So I was still teaching, but I found that a lot of the work I was doing was teaching other teachers how to have culturally competent classrooms. And so I got into that work of how do we take English and math and make it culturally competent for the kids that are in our room. I worked at an extremely diverse school that had a large immigrant population, specifically from Guatemala. And where we were situated, it was an interesting time because we had kids who were in gangs, kids whose parents may be in the KKK. And then we had this huge immigrant population. And all of my kids were supposed to read the same book and learn math. Right? And so it's like, how do we do that work? Well, we diversify, right? And so I introduced this concept of like not teaching one book to a whole group of kids. Maybe teach 5. Is it more work for me as a teacher? Yes. But is it more effective for my kids? Yes. And so through that work, I really found a passion for explaining really complicated diversity topics to educators. And when I transitioned out of the classroom, I really loved doing that work. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm sick of not making any money. So I'm going to teach myself how to use Tableau so that I can be a data analyst. And so I did. And I found that when I was doing this data analyst work for a couple of different tech firms, that I was also the in-house DEI consultant. And I was like, yeah, we shouldn't have to talk about why data visuals should be inclusive. Yeah. That should be a given. We changed the color scheme from France to North America. Why wouldn't we shift the language to be more inclusive for both of those countries as well? That doesn't make sense, right? And so I was doing a lot of that work, naturally. And then the pandemic happened.
So fun.
Yeah. So when we moved, it was a natural progression for me to look into what it could mean to offer those kinds of services here in PEI and what kinds of services are currently being offered and where was the gap. And I found that the gap was really in level 1 presentations, right? A lot of folks are ready for level 2s and level 3s, and there are plenty of folks on the island who do that. But nobody was addressing the kind of net negative percentile or net negative population who really didn't know anything but wanted to grow. And they found that they were really getting bit, around town when they were engaging in work because they didn't know. They were saying things that deserved being bit, frankly, right? But you don't know. So where is the step for them? Right? How do we start somebody with a 200-piece puzzle, not a 2,000-piece puzzle?
Right.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. And so that's really kind of what grew into offering these kinds of services here with this particular slant being the Maritime specific. Yeah.
And so you went from a teacher to a data analyst to an entrepreneur. Yeah. Did you ever think you'd run your own business?
Yes. So, but hear me out. While I was teaching, because teachers don't make any money in the United States, I was also working in kitchens, and I was making cocktails, and I was doing all sorts of different odd jobs to kind of make ends meet. And I thought what I wanted to do was I wanted to open like a classic speakeasy. I still do. But let's do it. We're starting here. But yeah, I thought I was going to run a restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah. And now I do run a restaurant in a lot of ways. I change people's palates every day. Right?
Oh, I like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. 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 I also thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I'm definitely a surgeon now. So.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. In some of these sessions, yes, it's very strategic, right? Yeah. And so it's funny because I was talking to my wife about it the other day, and I was like, my childhood self is very proud of the adult. I wanted to be a pediatrician. I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be a doctor, and I'm doing all of those things through the work of DEI.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
That's really amazing. Aw, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How did you navigate the world of, okay, you get to do work that you love, but then you're also running these two businesses. So there is that stuff that needs to be done too. Ugh. How's that for you?
I wish that when someone said entrepreneurship is fun, they had also said, but make sure you plan your vacation. Because the amount of work that goes into running two businesses is absurd. And I have a business partner for Beyond the Brim, and it's still absurd.
Yes.
And so it's an interesting balance between having days where I don't do anything but accounting and having days where I do nothing but talk to people, And then don't get me started on taxes. Goodness gracious. Learning the new tax system, it was a trip and a half. Shout out to my accountant because I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Here you go.
Yeah, literally.
Take it.
But I was fortunate enough to have made enough money to be able to afford an accountant, right?
Yes.
I can do that. Yes. Not everybody can. And so it's an interesting thing when I sit with my own societal advantages versus the societal risk associated with those advantages. And I really have to keep that in mind every time I open my mouth about progress or success, right? Because I am uniquely suited to be successful at the moment. And I know that. Yeah.
Man. My wheels are turning.
I can tell. I want to have another sip of this.
Yeah, do that. Yeah, sometimes I guess that goes back to just what I said about privilege before too, right? Where sometimes it's like I want to be able to do awesome things too and be successful and do all that and not have to feel bad for it because I am also well positioned in many ways, right? So it's like, how do we wrestle with that feeling?
Yeah.
And sometimes I even feel like an idiot saying it.
Well, it's not that you're an idiot. The guilt is understood because privilege comes with the understanding of judgment. And that's why I like phrases like societal advantage versus societal risk.
Yeah.
And
can you explain those to us?
Yeah. So I actually have a cute little chart that is a graph that shows just an X and a Y axis and societal advantages on one side. And those are basic things. Like what puts us ahead in society? Is it having a car? Is it having a degree? Is it all of these things? And not from the context of like, should we or should we not have capitalism, right? Like it's not in one of those existential conversations about like systems, which does have a place, but most people in their day-to-day are not ready to talk about how we should dismantle capitalism. And like, I can't fix that in 90 minutes or less, so I don't attempt, right? But societal advantage are those things that put us ahead. But the problem is with all of those things, there is a certain level of societal risk that is different depending on who we are. And instead of looking at privilege as something that is good or bad, it is something that we all have in various contexts. And for some of us, there is a societal advantage associated with that. That is a low societal risk. And for others, it's a higher societal risk. I tell people all the time, I work with a bunch of lovely consultants, and one of them happens to be white. And everyone says to me, I can't believe you have a white diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. And I said, that's because you're associating diversity, equity, and inclusion with being Black and gay.
Yeah.
You assume that my colleagues are able-bodied. You assume that they're straight. You assume that they are married or that they have partner. You assume all of these things about diversity because you can't physically see it. But the reality is I have the privilege of being able to go to any church barbecue in the state of Georgia and getting a plate. I can get a plate at any barbecue. If I take my colleague, guess what? Not only can she not get a plate, she can't even taste the barbecue sauce. There's societal advantage there that I have.
Right.
And for some folks listening, they're going to be like, but barbecue is not the same as equal rights. That's because you haven't gone to Georgia. I can do an entire podcast on complaining about the barbecue available to me here in PEI.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I got to get up with some lobster, though.
I know, but nobody grills it over charcoal anymore here.
I mean, we could try.
Oh, no. No, you don't need to. I will do it. Okay. You get the lobsters. I'll grill it over the charcoal.
Great.
And I'll bring the drinks.
Perfect.
Done. Success.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
But I love talking about food, right? It's why like I just finished a little pet project that I loved that I say pet project because now people are confused about what I do for a living.
Do you just eat all the time?
No, literally. Somebody's like, are you just a chef? And I'm like, no. I'm not a chef. I'm not an Instagram influencer. Like I have a job. But it's funny because I got the privilege of doing this really rich show that is going to be on 501. But it's, I'm so excited for folks to have access to it because it takes a look at the food scene in PEI and how people from all over the place have chosen PEI to be their home and how they've taken the things that make PEI, potatoes and lobster, but made them from where they're from.
Yeah.
That's
and like,
cool.
For me, that fusion of like decolonizing our palate is so huge. When I got here and I realized that the thing that people do is boil lobsters, I was like, why? You can do so many other things. Yes. But then I realized that that's rude. That's what you want. If you want a boiled lobster, you get to have one. The nostalgia is there for you.
They're just so good.
I know, but let me put some jerk sauce on it. Like, charcoal and jerk sauce. Just hear me out.
I've got the hookup for lobster, so we can try some new things this spring.
Yeah. But like food, talking about diversity through the lens of food is my jam. And so I'm really excited for Worth Our Salt to appear and to air. And I am so geeked. Yeah, Worth Our Salt.
That's exciting. Well, if
I guess I could have asked. I should have probably asked somebody if I could like name drop it, but it's
well,
fine.
So there now. Is that here first? All our millions of listeners.
Or editing staff will have to edit quite a bit.
No. Somebody told me not to. I'll apologize.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. That's cool. I like that because you're so into your work, and I imagine it takes a heavy toll many days too, right? Because it's a lot of energy put into this work. That you have fun passions on the side too that continue to energize you, and you can just kind of take that mental break in some ways.
Absolutely. And I love when people ask me about fashion or when people ask me about food, because for me, yes, as a DI consultant and as a woman who wears bow ties, like clearly my work is rooted in my identity, but also like, let's just talk about degender our closets. We don't have to talk about intersectionality from the perspective of the Kimberly Crenshaw context of intersectionality. Right. We could talk about it by saying you get to wear men's pants because guess what? They have pockets.
Yeah.
And the sizing is more consistent.
Yeah. Right?
Oh my God. Like, just buy a slim fit men's pant and call it a day.
Good to
like,
go.
Right? But like, those are ways we can talk about it and talk about it in context as opposed to, you know, the heady PhD of it all.
Yeah. That's fair. That's interesting.
Somebody asked me if I was going to get a PhD, and I said, no, I want to remain approachable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want to remain relatable.
We don't need to add doctor to the front.
I just want, and I feel like you're not relatable. There's a level of elitism that makes you not relatable there. And I say that knowing that some of my best friends have PhDs and I love them and they're relatable. But I find that in this DEI work specifically, I can't get a farmer in Tignish to talk to me if I introduce myself as Dr. Bradley.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not the way.
But I think you would wear it in your own unique way.
Yeah. I
mean,
don't
let that be the thing that doesn't get you there, right?
Yeah.
Like, who knows?
Yeah. Who knows what my professional development will look like? And that's the thing, right? I'm always learning. I'm always taking classes. I'm always doing all of these things. But I'm not necessarily always seeking the validation of higher education.
Right.
And that's probably because I'm still bitter about my master's. But I'll deal with that in therapy.
I'm like, oh dear, there's a big story there, sounds like.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, if that was the thing, I didn't finish my master's degree. I just left my program when that professor told me that information. And I was like, well, you're the superintendent. So you probably know what you're talking about. Like, I should probably just pull up. Yeah.
That's too bad. And
I appreciated the
still
honesty.
led you here eventually.
But I appreciated the honesty.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
like,
why get your hopes up?
Why waste my money? Why waste my money?
You're right. Yeah. As hard as that would have been to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
It's not the hardest thing I've ever heard. Now. So I was like,
thanks.
There you
go.
Yeah. That's the thing. I feel like that's the biggest thing for me is like nobody's going to tell me anything I haven't already heard. And I'm a professional, right? Like I don't do a session and see every face of everybody who ever said something negative to me, right? Like I don't have that weight. And that comes with work. That comes with self-work.
I was just going to say, like, how do you, like, keep that at bay? Or, you know, I'm sure there's times that anger and whatnot can bubble up. But
well, interestingly enough, not really. And I say that not from a place of like like being a little condescending or conceited, but like genuinely it's my job, right? And I think that for me, I can separate somebody's trauma triggers from my own because I've done that work, right? Like I'm very familiar with the psychology associated with what your body does when it's stressed. And I know my own tells, and I know I can tell when somebody else is having that same thing. So a lot of times if somebody like lashes out or says something to me, it's not actually about me. Right. And my biggest thing is I grew up in the southern United States where the first time somebody called me the N-word was I was 4. And so for me, when somebody bites me in a session, my thing is you have to bite harder than that, bud. Like commit.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're going to go for it,
go for it. But also, why in this moment did you feel threatened? Because when people bite like that, it's because they feel backed into a corner. And my thing is, why do you feel attacked? What did I say that caused you to feel attacked?
Yeah.
Well,
and let's look
you
at
said
that.
Privilege. And I said, I did. What did you hear, though, when I said that word? What did you hear me say? Well, I heard you say that I was a terrible person. I said, right. Did I say that?
It's just all those meanings that we attach to things or our way of interpreting.
I was like, well, and you can't separate what somebody on Facebook told you from what you're now hearing in a logical, like, educational session. Because frankly, we think Facebook is the same as
real life.
Literally. Like, we forget that Google is not a trained professional.
Right.
Google is trained to tell you what it thinks you want to see. It is not a trained professional, though. It is not objective at all. And so it's hard because I fight a lot of these societal constructs of like judgment and weight that come with some of these concepts in sessions in real time because people are waiting for me to tell them that they're terrible. And so when I show up and there's music and we're chatting and there's snacks, people are waiting for the shoe to drop. They think that I'm a snake in the grass.
Right.
And I'm like, I know, that's why I wear my snake earrings. Literally. Like, I literally have snake earrings, and sometimes I wear them to sessions when I know that people are going to be a little nervous.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
I'm just here to help.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm just here. Let's just be.
Yeah. And I make a mean cocktail. I could make money doing other things, right? Yeah. This is what I'm choosing to do. I didn't come here to bite you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. It's such important work.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's like interested in this should probably start following you. Gay From Away on Instagram.
Yeah. Honestly, I tell people all the time, they're like, where can I go to like get like an understanding of these things? And I'm like, follow Gay From Away. Don't follow Beyond the Brim on the internet.
Yeah.
Go look at people being people. My wife and I are not tiny. We're not pretentious, although I will say that my wife tells me all the time that my bow ties make me look pretentious. Like, we're just people.
Yeah.
And I think that you get more merit and worth out of watching people be people than you would if you followed an account that gave you a definition a week.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And like get out
and actively
and do things
make relationships
and go to these.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many businesses owned by diverse folks here on the island, and so go.
Shout out to Fifth Wave. Go to Fifth Wave Coffee. I love them. They're amazing. They're great.
Love it.
And I find that you will just sit and you will listen, because we know a lot about the coffee scene in PEI. And no, I love Receiver. Lord knows I love Receiver, right? But I think that there's merit in also going to places like The Shed or like Fifth Wave, where they are making coffees that aren't necessarily the Starbucks version of like, but better, right?
Yes.
And again, I love Receiver. Let the record show. I am there weekly.
Their breakfast sandwich.
Dude, I'm there weekly. But that said,
but you move it around, right?
Yeah.
You don't, and that's the same thing.
Yes.
That's PEI too, is we have our places that we like to go, and we just keep going to them over and over and over
and
again.
It's little things, right? Next time you're at Founders Food Hall, like, don't go to the burger place or get pizza. Do something else.
Yeah.
Try something else. What does it look like to try a bucket? What does it look like to try an authentic taco?
Yeah.
And experience that. And see what that's like for you. And you might not like it. It's not a commentary.
And that's okay,
fine.
too.
But you tried it. Yeah.
Just try it.
Just try it. We should just do gum commercials.
Done.
Right? That sounded very Winter Fresh, circa 98. Like,
they'd love us.
The Big Red commercials, you remember those? Like,
love it.
yeah.
So what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs or anyone that's just starting?
Oh, man. This is hard.
All the things, probably.
I think the biggest advice I would give is give yourself the same grace that you give to other people. I think that as entrepreneurs, we assume that we should know it all and have it all figured out. And we should know the market and know our audience and know our brand in and out. We should know all of these things. And we're not flexible.
You have to be perfect right from the get-go. Yeah.
And it takes away your ability to flex to whatever life is actually showing you. And I find that it's hard because we're taught that if we're not rigid, if the business plan doesn't follow the business model, you have failed. And the reality is, no, I am open to the possibility that I don't know everything today, and I may know less tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's the biggest thing. I feel like we all like assume that when we reach adulthood that we're adults, period. Congratulations. Here's your certificate. You're done baking. And I'm like,
you know how to adult now.
You are done baking, right?
Yeah.
The bread is done. It is on the rack and it is ready.
Yeah.
Like, no. Some of us will be proofing till we're 50, and that's okay.
And beyond.
Literally,
Yes.
right? And so it's an interesting moment when we look at ourselves like we're one-dimensional. Like, nobody wants to listen to a song that doesn't have a bass line. Like, relax. You are building the music. If your business is the music, you are starting. And when you start your business, it may just be an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
But what happens after that?
Right.
And how do we build on that? It doesn't just stay that way. You know? So that's the advice. If that makes any sense.
I like it. I mean, it relates back to the way that you said that people need to approach the DEI work too, right? Like, you can't just expect to be an expert the first day that you decide you want to learn about it.
Yeah.
So if you approach your business with that same mindset, give yourself that grace. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hate when people are like, trust your gut. I'm like, no, calibrate your gut.
Yeah, your gut's been wrong for a long time.
Right. And so what does it look like to do that work while also giving ourselves the space to be wrong? Like, it's okay to be wrong. And I'm not saying that when we're wrong, there are no consequences, because there are risks. But if you aren't open to at least considering that you were wrong, you will fail every time.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah. Scary. It's scary. And it's like digging into like, what is that fear that's holding us back, right?
Yeah. But also I find that like at no point, if you try it and it doesn't work and you're like, crap, I now need a full-time job. If you say to somebody, I spent a year trying this really lucrative project and I was smart enough to realize that it wasn't working, so I'm taking a step back from this project while I learn more things. This is an opportunity to learn more things. Nobody's going to be like, you know what? That's a terrible answer. Like nobody says that.
Yeah.
Like,
also, we have like a labor shortage here right now.
Literally.
So. Like, you're good. If you need to find a job,
oh my God, go be a teacher. No, like literally, like you're it's fine. Like, and I think that there's a stigma there, right? Like if we fail or if it doesn't work, then I have to go back to what I was doing before. I'm like, no, you don't. You still get to have boundaries. You still get to set yourself up to be the way that you want to be and to live your life the way you want to live it. But there's now an understanding of worth, right? And if that was the journey, that's worth it. You know, like you don't have to make $1 million to be successful. And I feel like we think that we do. I think we think that a dollar amount is what defines our success or cements our success.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
we had that success episode too, and that's what we talked a lot about how a lot of people, when we pose the question, what is success, they say, oh, money. Yeah. It's like, no, it's so much more than that. Yeah. Define what it is to you. To everything.
And if all success is money, wow. Like,
what a sad life to live.
Yeah, but I also understand it though, right? Like, I understand financial security. I understand the want for financial security. Yeah. And I want us to get to a point where our society can understand that there is more than like, great, we all have it. Now, can we actually have real goals? Yes. Like, can we actually have like these things? But there is a level of understanding that comes with financial security, and there's a benefit to financial security. Yeah. And it is tough when you don't have it. As someone who hasn't always had it, it sucks. And it's a weird ride. And it's hard to break that cycle in your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. But you can always do something else. The difference is, right, when we talk about financial security and the fear of financial security, for a lot of us, it comes from childhood when we weren't in control. Yeah. And the reality is you're now an adult. You're in control.
Yeah.
And there's a labor shortage. Now, that's not to say that everybody wants to hire a Black lesbian to go do whatever the job is, right? There's a barrier there. But the reality is right now, necessity breeds invention. So what are we doing?
Yeah.
How are we getting crafty?
Yeah. What is that going to look like?
Let's MacGyver our dreams. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. And there's so much joy in that unknown sometimes too, right? And there are a lot of people who just like want to clamor onto that certainty. But what really is certain anyway, right? Like there's so many unvariables.
That's a trauma response, right? I find that it's tough to navigate it because as somebody who didn't always eat, right? Like I didn't always have access to food. There was a really interesting moment when somebody was like, well, your problem is you're just privileged. And I was like, okay, I can accept that. I can accept that as a true reality. And if my understanding of this thing is rooted in my privilege, that's work I can do. Doesn't mean what I said isn't true. Both things can be true.
Yeah.
Right? It's 4 hours earlier than it is right now in BC right now. We don't question that. Like, two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
We don't know how it works, but we know it's true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't have to necessarily understand how that privilege works for somebody else or works for myself to understand that it is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Man, oh man.
So casual closet conversations.
Yeah. Just hanging out in the closet. No big deal. So we talk a lot on the podcast about taking care of ourselves. So especially when you're doing the work that you're doing, and pretty full plate, it sounds like. How are you making sure that you're okay?
Okay, so not well, frankly. Not well. And I think that it's an interesting moment because I'm always combating my like internal need to be successful, based on my definition of success, and also to like value rest. I think that it's funny because I never got taught to value like self or like time for self. My mom was a single parent who worked 14-hour shifts in the hospital, and there were 3 of us and I was the youngest. And I tell people all the time, like, my mom did not live that life for me to like eat, pray, love my way through the world, right? Like, she didn't. Like, my job is not to eat, pray, love my way through the Maritimes. Like, no, I have things to do, right? Yeah. And so that cultural need to want to produce because my mother suffered, is rich in me. And because we have this really toxic work culture, I like struggle with hustle culture. I literally, a couple months ago, just finished an article for CBC around this exact concept of like hustle culture versus self-care. And where's the balance? Because I don't get to have self-care. I am young, I am brown. And for me, in my mind, right, I have to be better than the best. And so it's tough because with that comes the realistic expectations of not being an able-bodied person, right? So I have to rest. And so how do I rest in a way that I don't feel guilty for is something I'm very much still trying to figure out. And most people will say, well, Evelyn, but you write for CBC or you did a cooking show. And I'll say, yeah, but that's me monetizing my hobbies. That's not me resting. That's the opposite of rest. Yeah. That is me maximizing my person to the extreme. And so when it comes to what my hobbies are, I'm learning every day what the new hobby could be. And a lot of my hobbies that I had before were like boxing or running or things that are very physically taxing, and I can't do those things anymore. And so it's like, oh, I need to find things that aren't rooted in, you know, body dysmorphia. I need to find things that aren't rooted in elevating my work persona. Like it's PD isn't a hobby, right?
I've learned that one the hard way.
Right? Yeah.
Like, what?
Right. And so I'm trying to explore all of these like intersectional identities that I possess and to suss out what rest looks like for me. And so one of the things I'm going to do for myself is I'm going to be taking voice lessons. There is an amazing performer on the island, Melissa McKenzie, who does voice lessons. And I am extremely excited to be engaging in some work with her because for me, singing has always been a part of my identity, right? It's always been a part of my culture. Yeah. I grew up singing in church. I did some work with youth choirs in the States. And so for me, it's very important that I decide if I'm singing for joy or if I'm singing because every year at Christmas we had to sing, right?
Yes.
And so I'm like tapping into like a little bit of therapy and a little bit of self-care and a little bit of this like just trying to deconstruct this hustle culture in my brain to figure out what Evelyn likes to do.
I love this.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's for a really long time. I like didn't sing and I was like, am I not singing because I don't want to, or am I not singing because I was made to do it as a child and now I think as an adult I don't like it? Which is it? And so we're gonna see.
I guess so.
Well, I say that knowing I need to schedule. I'm sure Melissa McKenzie is listening to this and she's like, did you? Or did you not?
We will be following up on
off
accountability.
She's like, did you or did you not put off your lesson? I was like, I did put off my lesson. But yeah, so we'll see. I love singing country music. So we'll do that an hour a week and see how that goes.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that for you. I think your approach to self-care is so unique. And also, I think a lot of people could take from that because they are like, oh, I better do some self-care. And that means I'm going to jump in the bath and have a glass of wine and put on a face mask or, because that's what Instagram tells me to do or whatever. But it's, what are the things that feed your soul and have you come back from it feeling rejuvenated? So it doesn't literally mean rest, like do nothing, right? It's just like we are all so unique and we have our own things. Like Steph's self-care looks a lot different than mine does. We're still working on it and I'm still learning, like, simmer.
Yeah.
But I've gotten so much better. And that takes practice too.
Yes. And I think that's the thing. I used to think that I needed to be really, really active in order to feel like my self-care was productive. Yeah. Don't worry. Therapy is good. But like the reality is I really had these interesting views of what I got to do versus what other people got to do. Other people got to do self-care. My wife, if you don't take a bath on Sunday with your book, no, unacceptable. What needs to be done so you can do that?
I like your wife.
Yeah, right? But like that's the reality. But that's how I am. I'm like, oh yeah, she can rest, but can I rest?
Right.
Can I make my
And while she's doing that, I'm gonna do this and this and this.
Literally,
and this.
I'm gonna mop, I'm gonna wet back the floor, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna make sure we have a grocery list, and right? And so obviously I love my wife, but like I love my wife because we'll be in the, like I'll be doing work, like eyebrows furrowed, tongue out, like work. Like I apparently have a work face and that's it. And really thinking hard, you know?
Yeah.
And she'll like put some music on and she'll like dance with me. And I'm like, oh yeah, because I can't not dance with my wife. That's not allowed. We're gay. Like
that's what we do.
That's what we do. What? That dance with your wife? That's straight people nonsense. So, but she knows I love to dance, and she knows that I haven't been able to take a dance class in a really long time. And so she's like, dance with me. And I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah,
like that I can do. Yeah.
I also kind of like that too, and we don't talk about that a lot on the podcast, but like couples and incorporating self-care with each other, like knowing if someone is having that furrowed brow and into like knowing like, oh, maybe I should kind of interject.
Yeah. You probably know when they need it before they know.
Exactly.
Right?
Because you know your person.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and communication, right? We moved during a pandemic, right? Like our entire marriage has been a COVID marriage. Yeah. And so a lot of our communication has led us to a place where she knows that certain things I'm comfortable. Yes, I am comfortable with you calling me. I'm comfortable with you holding me accountable for these kinds of things. I don't want you to hold me accountable for other things, but I will take it. You know? But that's the nature of honesty. And I think that a lot of this stuff is rooted in if you can be honest with yourself. And if you cannot judge yourself. Yes. And that's hard because we are hardwired to be judgy. And so what does it look like to just notice that you're doing it and to pause yourself? Because I don't ever stop myself. I judge myself all the time. But I don't ever stop myself from that happening. I leave space for it, but I don't let that be the only thing that takes up space.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and those thoughts are just going to occur. Like, we can't stop them before they happen. No. It's like, are we going to believe them or not?
Well, and I'm not going to, keep a tally. Okay, self, you did this today.
Right.
Like, no. If I did, I did. And I must have felt like I needed it. Like, I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to cut out the word fine from my vocabulary. Like, I need to stop saying I'm fine. Like, I need better words. But I always notice when I say that I'm fine. And I'm like, I wonder why I think I'm supposed to be fine right now. Do I want to be fine right now? Do I think I'm supposed to be fine right now? Am I hoping I'm fine?
Right.
And I'm scared because I'm not fine. And what happens after that?
And why has fine become the level that we're
baseline?
Yeah.
Why not? I'm excellent.
I literally,
really good.
Yeah. When I talk,
or I feel really shitty right now.
When I taught kids, I always said, "Why be good when you can be great? Why be great when you can be exceptional?" And then I sit myself in a position where I'm fine with being fine. Yeah, and that's a really interesting moment where I'm like, oof, I've got a couple of students who would be unimpressed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I gotta do better. How can I want more for them than I want for myself? We do that though. We want more for others than we ever want for ourselves. And it's like, you're worth it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like I could sit in this closet with you forever.
I want to make a joke so bad about you not being the first woman to say that to me. But yeah.
Amazing. I'm so happy that you joined us.
Yes.
I have a feeling we might want to get you back.
I'll come back.
We'll buy the drinks next time.
Look, no, this is my pleasure. I loved being able to kind of engage.
Really fun. Yeah. So you did mention you have Gay From Away on Instagram.
Yes.
What other ways or how is best for people to follow you, get to know you?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Sweet. So I actually despise social media like the plague. So I don't actually have personal social media. Beyond the Brim Consulting has a social media page. And then my wife and I have Gay From Away because we think it's really important that we do that activity together. It's like kind of our hobby together. So yeah, if you're looking to kind of reach out and engage, Beyond the Brim Consulting, or just kind of Gay From Away, just to see something different.
Yeah. All the fun things they're up to.
Yeah,
I enjoy
lots of cooking, lots of music.
Yeah,
my wife makes fun of me all of the time. It's her favorite thing.
I saw some really nice photo shoot pictures the other day.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You looked awesome.
I can't even handle it. I was being a goof and I was like being funny for her, and then she put them on the internet.
It was wonderful. Like, those are just for you.
Oh, if you really want to giggle, she has a Twitter, and her Twitter thread that she always uses for certain things is Old Man Evelyn. And so it's me just being a crotchety old man and me saying really kind of nonsense things that she's like, I'm putting this on Twitter. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I think it's important that people see that I'm a person, right? Yeah. Like, I am a professional, but like, I'm a goofy person. I drink scotch. I would, smoke tobacco if I wanted to like not be married anymore. But like, I'm just like,
you're out doing the things.
Yeah, I'm out doing the things. Yeah. I mean, I'm wearing Edgar Allan Poe socks, for goodness sake.
I love them so much.
And I know we're wrapping up the episode, but like, I also think it's really important as an entrepreneur also not being like one of those people that separates them as an entrepreneur and as a person. Like, you're still a person behind the business. And so often when I used to do branding work, a lot of people are like, how do I brand myself to be this person? I'm like, don't change too much. You still want to be authentic. Like, why are you putting like a different poster?
You're enough.
You think?
Literally, you're enough.
Yeah.
Like, you in and of yourself are enough. You're enough to do the work. You're enough to pursue what you want to pursue. Like, you're enough.
Exactly.
And I find that that's the thing. It's like, people are like, self-love. And I'm like, love is not enough. Like, love is not enough, right? Like, but understanding that you are enough is enough. And like, what do we do? How do we do that work?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
We
do it in one-on-one coaching. No.
Yeah, she's got you. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I had a blast. This was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I guess we're gonna wrap it up.
We're gonna wrap it up. Another episode in the closet. Done.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Another episode in the closet.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
Follow us, Thriving Tides, on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.